So you're playing all the right notes. You know the changes, your time is good, everything. So why doesn't your bass line sound like it's dancing? Well, the real answer is hiding in the recordings and what the masters are actually doing. And today we're going to show you the one thing that changes everything. Welcome to Upright Citizens, where two bass nerds share how they think about music.
From the bottom up.
What's up, Reuben?
What's up, Bob?
How are you?
I'm doing good. Look at these bright lights. Look at these beautiful bright lights. It's good to be under them with you, sir.
Yes, sir. We're evolving. We're on screen now.
Just a tiny, tiny bit.
Beautiful.
You know?
Beautiful.
What we jumping in today?
I always love our conversations here at the Upright Citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got some fun topics in mind for today. But before we do anything else, let's listen to this.
Okay.
What do you feel? How does that make you feel, Reuben?
Warm, inviting,
cozy.
A little bit.
Like we're part of the party.
Yeah, those broad notes.
Now we're talking.
I mean, yeah, that's what it is. They're inviting. They're warm. They engulf the music. They at least definitely the little duo thing that we heard. What was that actually?
So that was the maestro Ron Carter.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
I knew that, but still.
With Tom Silverstein on guitar.
Yeah.
It's an unreleased track.
Okay.
It's a new single. It just came out, I think, earlier this week, but we're filming this a little earlier. And so what we're hearing there is, I mean, it's so swinging what Ron is playing on the bass.
No doubt.
Of course, but it's not just the notes he's playing. It's not just the pitches he's playing, which are excellent, of course. Beautiful intonation. His attack is amazing.
As a matter of fact, I really like the quality of the bass, the way it's recorded. I feel like I haven't heard Ron sound that clear in quite a while. Maybe it's also because there's no drums covering up his sound, but you can actually hear the pitch, the articulation of the notes better than you usually can hear them, I feel.
Absolutely. Very transparent sound.
Yeah, no doubt.
Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, real quick, if you love bass and getting deep into more musical concepts that we talk about here on Upright Citizens, then you should know there's a whole other world of this at Open Studio.
That's our home base. We have courses for all experience levels, a global online community of musicians just like yourself, masterclasses, and more.
So if you're serious about music, then openstudiojazz.com is the place for you. That's openstudiojazz.com. Now back to the show.
Yep.
That's really the crux of what we're getting into today.
No doubt.
Is why it sounds like that and how we can get our bass lines swinging like Ron Carter's.
Okay, come on. Teach me. Come on. Jump into it. Let me know.
So let's dig in. Let's talk about what we can do to get a little closer to that sound that we heard the maestro doing. Now, there's a few different ways that we can think about walking bass lines. We heard Ron Carter there playing in 2 as well, but towards the end, we heard him walking, right? We heard these long, broad notes. And that's usually where we can hear a defining characteristic between somebody that's not been playing that long or maybe is newer to the style.
Right.
And I always bring it back to the idea of it being like a ride cymbal. You hear the clear attack when a drummer hits the ride cymbal, and you hear that decay until they hit the cymbal again. What are your thoughts on that? You agree?
Definitely. I mean, it's Are you now? Let's make sure. Let's break it down even more. Are you saying the quarter note, the half note, the whole note? What exactly are you talking about when you say that?
I think both.
Okay.
I think both. Now, it can be really hip, of course, to close the note and make it a little shorter intentionally. But what I hear is a lot of bass players, again, maybe that haven't been doing this very long, do it unintentionally. So we want to talk about convention. It's kind of like this. So if I'm playing like a 2-feel, maybe I'll play the changes that we just heard.
Yeah.
Not so swinging, right? Do you know what I mean? Because it's cut off. Now, we can do that, and stylistically that might be what's happening, but now I'm trying to connect these notes and make it bounce a little bit more.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But what I think is really hip as well too is to mix those.
Right.
Mix that up, which I hear you doing amazing, and I want to hear you play it.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the whole thing is that the whole notes or the broad notes, I don't know. That's the main thing. I always say broad because, I don't know, that's a better...
Because you mean long.
Yeah,
right?
that's a better way. I like it's a hipper way to say long, I guess. The broad notes mean something. Actually, the shorter notes mean something because you come from the basis of the broader note, right? Like, if that's the foundation... Those shorter notes kind of like, oh, like, wait, what's that? You know,
they
air
define
has
themselves.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear you.
Because you it feels the broader notes feel good. It's the foundation and always feels better to me. I have preached that on Upright Citizens plenty of times.
Oh yeah.
If you go back and listen to the 100-something episodes that we've done.
Self-plug.
But the shorter notes are also where the personality comes out most of the time.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. Maybe I should break into the story that I have. Let me pull out this pork chop right here for a minute.
Because this applies to any bass function. It doesn't mean just an upright bass.
But
you know?
I started to think about broader notes really from doing these sessions with this great filmmaker, composer, Camara Kambon. He's a great friend of mine. Well, he was a great friend. Camara, I haven't seen you in a long time. Hope we're still friends. But I used to go to LA early on in my career when I was a youngster, coming to town to play gigs with whoever. And I would call Camara. I'd be like, hey, Camara, I'm in town. He'd be like, great, man. I want you to come in and do some tracks on these recordings. It could be whatever. Actually, he was one of the, I don't know if he is now, but he was a filmmaker, but he also was a writer for Dr. Dre at that time. So he would do all these kind of tracks, I guess, and beats. Like ghost, like writing. I would just come in and just do random things at a time, right? Anyway, I remember this one session, I came in and he was telling me to do, I think it was on electric. As far as I remember, it was on electric. And he'd be in the booth there. He's like, all right, no, just play to this track. And I had to kind of learn it and it'd be like maybe some random chords. Maybe it could be a whole band. It could be whatever at the time. And I remember I can't remember exactly what it was, but something similar to this.
You were composing a bass line on the spot, or he had something in mind for you?
No, I was composing a bass line.
Cool.
Or playing off of something that was there already.
Sure.
So it was something like maybe... And I was playing it like that.
Okay.
Right? Relatively long notes.
Sounded to me.
Right?
Yeah.
Relatively long.
Yeah.
And he was, and maybe he was even slower, but he got on the intercom, mic, whatever. He says, Reuben, can you please hold those notes over to the next beat? And that's the way he articulated it. He was like, each note I need you to play, make sure it rings out till the next beat.
All the way.
And I was like, huh? You know, and he made me more like, if I'm going to do any inflections, make sure the next note is long.
Gotcha.
You know?
Yeah.
So you're going 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. that I remember actually. That's why it's coming back to me. That was the rhythm, but I guess his whole thing is whether it's half note, quarter note, whatever. Make sure it has as much length as possible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it keeps the foundation.
And when he said that, the main part that I took from it is that trying to get to the very end of the note is what really makes the feel just like different. It feels better, really.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, for me, instead of.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know, I'm being very deliberate right now, but
a question. Question. Do you recall, is that bass line, like when you're doing the attacks, was that connected with the bass drum and the beat that you were hearing?
Probably.
Do you recall? Because
Probably.
it's a different thing if we're thinking about in a jazz sense.
Yes.
If we're thinking about like the 2 feel that I was doing earlier, and maybe we can do a little bit of walking, doing something in 4, well, that's more of a connection with the cymbal, with the ride cymbal, you know, like with the analogy I was talking about earlier. I'm being very intentional here too. Yeah.
Instead of, I don't even know how to play.
It's hard to do it.
I don't even know how to do it shorter anymore.
Exactly.
To tell you the truth. But
you have to be really intentional. It doesn't feel
right.
It feels almost comical.
Right.
But if you're thinking like more like this, it's maybe more connected to how you would hear that spang-a-lang on the cymbal.
But also, I think also the way when you be intentional about the inflections too, because
yes,
when you do the inflections, all that too, how long can you make those too? Right?
Yeah.
We're getting into the really,
but that's where it's at. How do you do this though? How do you actually do this on the bass without like showing? There's a right hand and then there's a left hand.
Yes.
Right? So we think about, there's 2 different ways that we really think about that. One tip that I have for any bass players, whether you're on upright or electric, is that if you're playing the string and you're pluck through the string, and when you go to pluck again, don't stop it before you play, because that's something that I see quite a lot in people that haven't been doing it maybe as much, or maybe they're just not aware of it yet. Right. So you can hear me stopping the note versus playing through the string. Right. And that's coming from thinking about the right
string,
cymbal.
You're saying you're leaving, you have your finger on the string below usually.
I usually do, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm trying to make sure I'm not stopping the note before I go to play it again.
Right.
Another thing is in the left hand.
Right.
If we're lifting up our fingers as we move from one note to the next, that's going to stop the note from ringing, obviously. Do you know what I mean? But the more we think about that, and you can practice this with scales, you can practice with anything you're doing, versus something like that. The only difference is that I'm lifting up my fingers in the left hand. Right. That's the only difference, you know? So that's a good way to work on connecting your notes for when you're walking.
I forget my little saying that I said, what was it? About intentional? What did I say now about the left hand? Left hand and right hand, do you remember now?
No.
The left hand is intentional, and the right hand is
instructional?
Is actually,
was that it?
Reactionary or something like that. You know, basically, I think the length of the note has to do what you do here mainly. And your right hand is reacting to that.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, definitely.
For the most part. It's obviously the combination of both. But
to get real nerdy, and this is a show featuring 2 bass nerds, the attack is coming from your right hand, wherever you're plucking from.
Right.
Unless you're doing some like hammer-ons, but we're not talking about that.
Right.
So the attack is definitely, the beginning of the note is coming from your right hand when you're plucking. And that's what I was talking about earlier. And that has a lot to do with, you know, like how you're starting the note and then how you're re-attacking for the next note. But yeah, for the left hand, it makes a difference. I wanted to play a little clip as well, if I could, because we talked about electric bass here. Let's listen to a great electric bass player playing and connecting their notes in a jazz sense.
Yeah, okay. Who'd that be?
This is Steve Swallow and John Schofield and Bill Stewart. And I think we've actually heard this album before on a previous episode. But I just wanted to highlight how Steve Swallow, who's incredible, I've got a great quote I would love to read by him as well too if we have time, how he connects his notes on the electric bass.
Come on.
You're playing real legato. And this is at the height. This is more of the climax of Schofield's solo here. Even in the upper register like that, really legato. It's almost got like this connected organ vibe. You know what I mean?
And he plays with a pick, too.
He plays with a pick, yeah.
Right.
All right, so I wanted to get some of that in our ears, but check out this quote from Steve Swallow. Because he started off on upright bass. Mm-hmm. There's some great recordings of him playing upright bass with, bunch of them. I didn't want to leave everything behind when I switched from acoustic bass to electric bass, and my heroes were Percy Heath and Wilbur Ware. I wanted that kind of envelope to my sound, and I wanted it whether I was playing the electric bass or the acoustic bass. And I should add, though, that I love the legato possibilities in the electric bass. To be able to sustain a high note in the high register so easily was a gift from heaven. So there's Steve Swallow talking about the legato playing on electric bass and how that connects with the tradition of the music.
That he had such a vision, right?
Absolutely.
He was so intentional.
Of course.
About his sound and about making sure that he kept the upright sensibilities that he was doing for so long. We did a great podcast, another shameless plug, on the great Steve Swallow and his evolution from the upright bass to the electric, and definitely go back and check that out.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, thank you for that trio, by the way, John Scofield, Bill
It's
Stewart.
so good.
Oh
It's
my
so
gosh.
good.
Wow.
All right, so let's break it down.
Okay.
What's the takeaway? What's 3 things that we can take away from this conversation about making your notes really swing when you're playing bass line?
I mean, be intentional. I'm going to say that.
Number 1.
Be intentional about legato notes. Start from there.
Mm-hmm.
That is your bass. Hello.
Nice
What?
pun. Mm-hmm.
What?
We should have more bass puns in the uprights.
I mean,
yeah.
Why not? Let that be your go-to.
Play legato.
Right.
Number 1. I love it. Number 2, perhaps, connect. If you're playing with the drummer, connect with the attack and the decay of the ride cymbal, especially when you're swinging. I think that's a great, if nothing, even if there's not a drummer present, if you imagine that intentional and be aware of that type of vibe, it's going to help you to swing, even if you're not playing with the drummer.
Help you to swing. Okay. All right. Well, anything else?
So number 3, I think it should be noted that this changes your sound. Do you know what I mean? If you're playing short, that's one type of vibe. And again, it can be a nice thing to do, but it does change your sound, and just be aware of that. So in close, why don't your bass line swing? Well, now you know it's not just the notes. It's not just the changes. It's the length of every single note and your intentionality, how it connects to the ride cymbal. So go put on a Ron Carter record tonight and just listen to it. There's nothing wrong with that. You could do that. You'll hear it immediately, and then you'll never unhear it. All right, we're Upright Citizens. Peace.
And we out.